Charles, we learned this week that Constable Mark Herman filed a complaint against Lena Hidalgo in the county because she's going to keep $1 million that he did not spend of his budget. And he feels that that money should be allowed to roll over to the next year. And he's going to take that money and do other things with it that's needed for his department. And he's also saying that what they're doing is illegal because the state passed a law just last year that could not happen, that should not be done, because they believe that's a part of the movement of defunding the police. What upsets me about what is going on, Charles, is that we can't take more cops off the street, but we have to pair more cops with mental health professionals and mental health experts, and also those who are qualified from the community to work directly with law enforcement. What we're learning now with this HEART organization that they're funding from the county is that they're responding to over 1,000 911 calls without handcuffs, without tasers, without anything to defend themselves. These are not police officers, but they being allowed to respond to 911 emergency phone calls for help. Over 1,000 we learned, and yet this is what we're doing in the county to help make the county safer. It's not making anything safer. In fact, you're setting up one of those good intended men and women who work for the HEART organization to be a victim of crime themselves. And we wonder why crime is so out of control, because we have leaders who are approaching this problem the wrong way.
I think Lena Hidalgo has made it very clear that she is far more concerned with the virtue signal than she is about the consequence to the lives of the average Harris County taxpayer. The Holistic Assistance Response Team, it sounds wonderful, right? It's trained professionals that are being sent out to 911 calls where the dispatcher has, in their opinion, discerned that they would be a more appropriate response, that they would be a safer response. The problem is the ability to discern that from just a few words over a telephone. And we would do a much better job in America if we had much more robust training for law enforcement in how to handle mental health crises. But of course, we're calling everything mental health now. Someone murders a whole bunch of kids at a school. Oh, well, it was a mental health issue. Somebody, with homeless people commit horrifying acts of criminal violence. Oh, well, it's a mental health conundrum. No, it's not. It's criminal, right? And while it might be downstream from brain-addled on drug addiction or sincere, natural, just a chemical disruption in the brain problem, it doesn't anyhow absolve them of the consequence of committing a violent crime. And there is in Texas. If you are so crazy, and that crazy isn't downstream from being intoxicated, so crazy that you don't appreciate what you did was right or wrong, well, that's a jury question or a judge question. It's not a media question. It's most certainly not a Lena Hidalgo question. And when she sends these civil teams, right, it's all great news. The Chronicle had this, the Houston Chronicle had this, oh, it's over 1,000 calls with this HEART response, and I'm sure they're doing good work. But it all stops when people are slaughtered. It all stops when people are killed. It all stops when people are responded without the level of training and the ability to use force if necessary. However, I do think we absolutely, because we see the other side of it, where we see police being dispatched to a mental health crisis and we see someone shot and killed that maybe didn't need to be shot and killed. And so,
but the idea of the HEART organization is a great one. We have a problem, and I have a problem personally with how it's being implemented, because
well, when you say it's great, so do you think, because we've seen this in the Pacific Northwest,
I said the idea,
sending civilians to police calls.
Let me finish. The idea of it is good, but the implementation of how it's put into effect is bad.
Well, how would you do it better?
Send those mental health experts on 911 emergency calls by themselves without being accompanied by a law enforcement officer. Teach them and pay that money for them to work together and better train law enforcement officers to not be so trigger happy when responding to mental health calls. But don't send someone from the quote unquote HEART organization on a dangerous call where someone can be violent and they're not trained or prepared to deal with a violent situation.
Well, the city of
That's
Houston,
my concern.
The city HPD has a program where they send out teams, and it's an officer and a caseworker. It is a team of people designed to de-escalate. And of course, that's really what we need, is better de-escalation training. This whole narrative that developed itself about 15 years ago in policing, go home safely, right? And that became the preeminent concern over public safety and your oath and your duty. And the thing with policing is it's a dangerous job that you stepped forward to and took an oath for. And that job's going to involve danger and your personal safety.
But that's why you take the money to better educate officers, better train officers.
But your safety can't be the preeminent concern. Officer safety was the excuse that was used for not entering in the classroom in Uvalde, and that was just disgusting cowardice.
That was police cowardice and police fear.
But they
remember,
offered up
one of them cats
safety.
Was talking to his wife on the phone.
No, I agree.
And she say, "Honey, I'm wounded."
Well, they wouldn't.
And he allowed them to take his gun and send him outside. Right. You and I both know that's a bunch of BS.
No,
what they did in Uvalde ain't got a damn thing to do with training.
No.
They had been trained. What they did down there was an absolute abandonment and an abortion of what was right and justice and to protect those children.
You're missing my point.
They wrong as hell in Uvalde.
It's downstream from this ethos of officer safety over everything. And in fact, you get paid all this money and you get this job that has a lot of, it used to have perks, not as many now, that were associated with you being the person that ran towards danger and ran towards crime. And that no longer seems to be the ethos. But the ethos, the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, East Coast nonsense ethos that we don't need policing has blown up in their face.
But Charles, Hidalgo is so out of control. I hate to say this, and forgive me, my dear sister. I love you, Lena, but what you're doing—
It doesn't sound like you love her.
No, hold on, brother.
I mean, it doesn't sound like you love her.
No, see, I can correct and I can be against something that is taking place out of love. But I cannot allow my love for the sister to stop me from speaking the raw and adulterated truth that's making the entire city unsafe and the county a failure. Look, we learned also that there's a man from Chicago, former gang member, Chico Tillman. He has been paid $100,000 by Harris County to come teach Houstonians and Harris County members how to make neighborhoods safer. How in the hell, Lena, could you give a man $100,000 from Chicago when he can't make Chicago safe? Chicago is a criminal failure. So how is he going to come into Houston, Harris County and teach us how to do what they can't even do in his own hometown? There are many men and women right here in Houston like Reginald Gordon and OG1 who've been doing it for free for decades and not a penny from the county has been given to him. Why don't you work with young men like that? Why don't you work with organizations to where they go in and try to talk to drug addicts and reform gang members for free? If they're doing it for free and you won't work with them, you're going to pay somebody in Chicago to come teach us what they can't do back home in their own city? Something's wrong with that. That shows how the leadership of the county is going in the wrong direction.
Well, the consultant grift is something that many politicians across this country have been using to hand out money to cronies and other associates for years. And it's horrifying. It's a horrifying abuse of taxpayer money. But it's something that Judge Hidalgo embraced very quickly. As soon as she took office, she brought in the former mayor of New York, de Blasio, the socialist mayor of New York. She brought in some de Blasio adjacent consultants and paid them huge amounts of money. We obviously are all aware of the debacle where she was paying a Democratic Party strategist, or paid them 7 figures, but tried to pay them, I think, $11 million for COVID outreach. And it's all about consulting that is really just handing out hard-earned taxpayer dollars with doing very little return. She's also diverted money from criminal justice, from public safety initiatives to buying trees. She's doing everything she can to virtue signal and nothing or very little to address the real problem of public safety in Harris County. I saw a story this weekend where a journalist was criticizing the 2 Republicans on the Harris County Commissioner's Court because a woman was going into labor in the Harris County jail and they just put her out into the street. And this journalist was using this story to condemn the Harris County Republican Party. My problem with that math is the Commissioner's Court completely controlled by Democrats. The reason we don't have a new budget is just because the Republicans won't show up, but that has no impact on the services provided. The Harris County Sheriff's a Democrat, all the Harris County judges are Democrats, everybody's Democrats. That led to this outcome where this woman was put in the street, but yet this journalist was still dishonestly trying to characterize it as a failure of the GOP. And the Republican Party has failed poor people
No
in
doubt.
big cities for decades, and they continue.
Absolutely.
The Democrats don't care about safety in our public schools, but the Republicans have absolutely abandoned urban public schools and underfunded it in
And have
Texas for
no
years and years.
compassion,
We
no
don't have
empathy
any
at all.
access to health care from great many Texans, the majority of Texas, because the Republican Party doesn't care. So I'm not here to present this binary where Republicans are good and Democrats are bad. They're all horrible.
One
But
thing
what
you and I
Lena
do-
Hidalgo is doing to public safety in Harris County is disgusting, and it's all about a
But
grift.
what you and I do, we speak about the wrong on both sides.
Right.
We point out the wrong on both sides. We refuse to endorse either side when they're wrong. And that's the problem in politics.
Well, you really love blaming white people for everything, but other than that,
Listen, we're politicians right now.
Okay.
We'll come back home. But the bottom line is,
Well,
we
I'm
have
glad
to
you can
be
admit
willing-
that's home for you.
We have to be willing to point out injustice, corruption, and wrong, no matter what political aisle you're standing on.
Right.
But the problem with leadership in this city, too many politicians are more concerned with the best interests of the party than the best interests of the American people. I see more love and dedication for protection of the party than love dedication for the American people. And we are all suffering because of it. It's poor leadership we're pointing out. It's corrupt leadership that we believe that we're pointing out. It's not about the personality. It's about the leadership styles and the failure of it. It's wrong what we're seeing, man, and Houston, Harris County must change course. Because the course we're on right now, we're going to hell with our eyes wide open.
Well, you have a lot of people that say, well, I've got to vote for this horrible person because they're the party that aligns generally with my feelings on things. But then you have the growing mass of people in the middle that just want reasonable politicians. If you look at the political microcosm that is Texas and Harris County, our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, horribly corrupt, right? A disgusting human being who has no business being the top cop for the state of Texas, right? I don't even know who his opponent is, the Democrat opponent, but I know it's a female lawyer. I will absolutely vote for her because I know for a fact Ken Paxton is corrupt. I also know in my heart that Lena Hidalgo is absolutely corrupt, tried to steward millions of our taxpayer dollars away, and I don't know hardly anything about Alex Mueller, her opponent, except for the fact that she went to West Point, and I believe she went to Harvard Law School as well. But I will tell you, I don't have any affirmative knowledge that she's corrupt. So I don't care Democrat, I don't care Republican. I'm going to vote for a Republican for county judge. I'm going to vote for a Democrat for attorney general because parties don't matter to me. I'm not supporting corrupt politicians. And that's what we're being told by both parties, that we have to support the corrupt or we are betraying somehow our ideologies.
The county judge race. I believe Lena Hidalgo's heart is in the right place.
I disagree.
But I believe that she was not qualified or really prepared to be the county judge. I believe that she did not have enough experience at that level to ascend
How does that justify the corruption?
Let me finish.
Okay.
To ascend to that position of leadership. But I believe that she's made some tremendous mistakes in those she surrounded herself with, and those she gave authority to operate in her name that led to serious corruption like we have not seen before in the county. And I believe that she bears responsibility at the top for allowing that to take place. What further also upsets me is that she's willing to not even debate Ms. Mueller.
Yeah.
And she said that's a waste of her time.
Right.
But it appears that Ms. Alex is willing and ready to debate at any point in time, anywhere. But yet you're saying that that's beneath me and a waste of my time. It shows a level of egotism and narcissism at its finest with politicians. Miss Alex, I would say this: if she wins, I wish you the best and I pray that you do well. But Lena, unfortunately, man, it's sad to say this, it's time for new leadership. She has to go. Because if we continue on the course that we're on with that type of leadership in Houston, Harris County, it's going to get so bad that we perhaps can never turn this Titanic around. Right now, Houston, Harris County is like the Titanic. And too many of us are fighting on a sinking ship when we need to be plugging the holes. And I believe we plug a major hole by taking the county in a different direction.
I absolutely agree. I think criminal justice system, we absolutely need someone that's going to approach it looking for a holistic solution, not just in name only like that holistic assistance response team, but a holistic solution to create more public safety for participatory, rule-following, tax-paying Harris County residents that seem to be completely forgotten by the math of this county judge, which it all seems to be virtue signaling about the homeless, virtue signaling about mental health crisis. But what about all of us that follow the rules, get up every day, pay our taxes, and go to work, and are suffering under the weight of this horrible crime problem? I think it's disgusting, and I hope we have a change both on the state level with the county judge and on the local level with the county judge and on the state level with the Attorney General's office.
As I've said before, Charles, I believe it's time for a third party. I believe that the idea and the concept of just two-party platform in America is outdated and antiquated. I believe that we must have a third party to balance the other two and to give the American people balance, because we don't have that.
I don't think the corporate interests that control the duopoly that both these parties are will ever allow it to happen, but I don't disagree with you, sir.
Well, the corporate interests never believed that the American people would take matters into their own hands when we had the Boston Tea Party and what they fought for, America's independence, for taxation without representation is tyranny. Right now, the American people, ask yourself the question, are you truly getting the representation that you deserve for the tax dollars that you are spending? Ask yourself that question. Are you truly getting back what you deserve and what you're paying in taxes?
Clearly we're not. The nation's report card, which is done by testing 8th grade and 4th grade students on a variety, specifically math and reading, but other just basic foundational educational principles, has established that we have seen our deepest, steepest decline after decades of rising levels of math comprehension, steepest decline ever recorded. We have also seen reading comprehension drop to the level it was at in 1982. That's for 8th grade and 4th grade students. And it's clearly downstream from COVID shutdowns of the public school system and private schools in this country. Now, what we've heard from the left is this parsing, this, oh, we didn't shut down schools, we just closed campuses. But the reality is you had a lot of students straining to participate online, a tremendous bureaucracy that made it very hard for them to participate, but you also had the clear lack of socialization and the participatory aspect of learning that so many children so desperately need. And it was all done based on this lie that we could somehow stymie the spread of this virus by not having kids go to campus, much like what we've determined was a lie, that if you got this vaccine that you wouldn't spread it, right? Whereas the vaccine very clearly makes you less makes the chance of death far lower for people with comorbidities.
But I was not against, Charles, keeping kids at home during COVID-19 spread of the disease, during that epidemic.
Well, that's
pandemic.
why these kids are doing so much worse.
What I have a problem with it is the way they implemented it and went about adding a solution to the problem of keeping kids at home. We had children at home where parents couldn't stay at home with them.
Right.
They had to go to work.
Right.
Those kids were told to stay at home for 8 hours a day, 6-7 hours a day, and educate themselves in front of a laptop or in front of an iPad.
Right.
There was no parent there to supervise those kids at all. We had kids, man, that could not fully comprehend what was being taught to them via the web, and yet they had no teacher to really work with in the classroom to help assist them and help them evolve. Look, man, this is sad what has happened. America's academic system has been a complete failure now for several decades. Look at the amount of money that we in America spend per student compared to other nations. They spend far less, but academically their children are performing so much better than American children. I think one of the radical steps that we should take, Charles, is this. They should make American teachers the highest paid teachers anywhere in the civilized world. I believe that we should make it mandatory that teachers receive a salary that is equal to some of the highest paid employees in the country. If we did that, we wouldn't have such a shortage of teachers willing to teach. We're short by tens of thousands all over America. Right here in Houston, Harris County and surrounding counties, we're short like 25, 30,000 teachers who just don't want to teach anymore. But also we have to make teaching a more attractive position and not ask teachers to be the parents at the same time in these classrooms. Discipline has gone completely out of the door. Some of these schools are so unsafe to where teachers now are being beaten up by kids and it's being videotaped and they think it's funny. That never happened when you and I was in school because parents and the community were serious with consequences. The coaches and the administration were serious with consequences. Now it's all about hug the kids, give them a kiss on the cheek and say, don't hit the teacher no more. This is a damn shame. That's what's happening in America. So teachers don't want to teach anymore because they're severely overworked and severely underpaid and underappreciated. We have to start with that area, how we take care of teachers first. And then we have to not be afraid of having a serious discussion of allowing more charter schools to develop and open in this nation. Because there's proof that some of these charter schools are performing much better than public school system in the same area and the same cities.
So it's long been my feeling that children do far better in smaller environments, right? And you'll see, like I raised my kids in Friendswood, although we kept them in Friendswood Public Schools for a while. We moved to the Galveston County portion of Friendswood for that school district, but we ultimately decided to put them in a far smaller private school on the southeast side of Texas, or of Houston. And I will say that I do think the Friendswood academic programs might have been stronger on some aspects than the private schools. You just had a whole lot more attention. Not only did you have attention, you had a tremendously greater opportunity for participation in extracurricular activities. Whereas these big, massive 5A and 6A schools, your kid's lucky if they get to do one thing, and they've got to go all in on that one thing. And it denies so many children that experience. Why? Because Friendswood wants to have the best football team they can have. So Pearland for years fought having a second high school campus because they wanted to have the best football team they could have. But it would be much better served if we had 10 small high schools with 10 small football teams and 10 small debate clubs and 10 small newspapers and 10 small, because you have more kids participating. And it's not just the academics, it's the whole thing. For years, for decades, we had this paradigm in the American educational system where a wealthy kid, a kid of privilege, and often a white kid would commit an offense and get one punishment, where a poor kid or a kid of color would get a wholly different punishment, right?
The zero tolerance policy.
So then you had the Obama administration come in, and they were pushing racial equity, right? Which was, well, if you punish a student of color for something, you've got to punish just as many per capita students of other races for that as well. Let me finish, please. That's exactly what I'm saying. And what it did was it made schools make a decision not to punish kids. No, I'm going to finish. You're going to make them a lie, but this is the truth. They were punishing kids based on their race, but more importantly, not punishing kids based on race. What the Obama administration should have done is said, hey, we're going to have the same consequence no matter who you are.
What they were doing, Charles, they were not punishing based on race.
They were not punishing. That's the end of the sentence.
This is what they were doing. They were over-punishing based on race. The same punishment that was given to a white student for the same infraction that a black student would commit, that white student would receive far less punishment than the black student.
And I agree that's wrong.
And so what was happening, the Obama administration was saying you cannot have two separate standards of punishment based on race.
What you're saying is that would make sense.
And let me say this.
That's not what it said.
In the American criminal justice system, for juveniles in the country, black and brown students for the same crimes were punished far worse than white ones who committed the same crimes. That's a fact.
I agree.
In fact, in the adult criminal justice system, what needed to be reformed on those levels. But what we did is we stopped suspending students that needed to be suspended.
Right.
We stopped removing kids that need to be removed.
Right.
And we allow kids who have a sole agenda of disrupting the learning environment to remain in the learning environment. And then what you have is them bullying so many kids who do want to learn, but yet they're afraid to excel in the classroom because their number one priority concern is keeping this nut off my behind while I'm in class every day. See, that's the problem there, brother. We got to clean that up.
You're literally agreeing with everything I said. That was the problem.
I'm putting it in proper context.
No, you're trying to reframe the problem was that instead of addressing the age-old, it's just like criminal justice reform. Instead of addressing the issues, it's all about the virtue signal. And what you're doing, like in the classrooms, when you tell teachers you can't punish this kid because of his race, what you're doing is abandoning the students around him that are almost always socioeconomically and racially homogenous. But the rule-following students around the aggressive, violent student, they're the ones that suffer.
What administration
but
said you couldn't punish based on race?
Well, what the Obama administration did was they tied federal funding to showing parity in discipline, racial parity.
If there's a racial
you want me to explain the problem?
In punishment for the same infractions, not just based on race.
What they did was just made it a racial parity. Instead of what we needed to say, we don't care who commits this offense, this is the punishment. And if the Justice and Education Department sees that you're punishing people differently for the same offense, that's a problem. But that's not the math they use. But it's just, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
I'm saying something I know for a fact.
You don't want to hear the truth, y'all.
Right now, today, this is the truth.
Yeah.
I've seen black kids, in particular black males, who go to affluent suburban white schools. When they get in trouble, the consequences and the punishment is still to this day different. I've seen, this is a fact, as God is my witness.
I don't disagree, and it's horrible.
I've seen white students get caught with alcohol on campus, and they're told to pour it out, and the police are involved, campus police involved. They call the parents and say, come pick up the child because the child is too intoxicated to go to jail. But yet a black kid can be caught with that same alcohol bottle and they're charged with bringing a prohibited substance on campus and taken straight to jail. These are facts that's happening still right now today. I've seen black students who get into a physical altercation in school, immediately handcuffed and taken to jail. White kid does the same thing. He's given 3 days in-house suspension, allowed to come back on campus, but the black kid is sent to an alternative school. That's happening right now today. So the Obama administration didn't fix it and didn't even change it because it's still happening right now today.
Okay, but you're absolutely right that that's disgusting and that needs to be addressed, right? But on the flip side, when you create this new bureaucracy of federal funding that says, no, we're not going to look at what the underlying, it's like criminal justice. So we're saying, oh, we have this broken criminal justice paradigm. Well, let's just stop policing. Let's just stop arresting thieves. Let's just stop arresting people that hurt people. Let's just stop enforcing the law. Who suffers? Law-abiding participatory citizens, small businesses, they all suffer, and the police don't do the work, and it's called criminal justice reform. And that's not reform. True criminal justice reform, just like true educational reform, would be to mete out the same punishment no matter how wealthy you are, how poor you are, or what your race is.
Let me say this.
To try to have the same level of public safety in every
Charles.
neighborhood, not just the rich, affluent neighborhoods. And where the Republicans, where the Republicans have failed the inner city schools is they said, hey, in Texas, we'll have a school in Friendswood with a $5 million auditorium, right? Or a $50 million football stadium.
That's a cheap stadium.
But if you go into the inner city, everything's crumbling.
That's a cheap stadium.
And the thing is, it doesn't matter if your parents are rich or poor where they live, you should be able to expect the same safety and the same everything of a school system in a single state.
I'm going to give you a solution that many are going to call radical.
Okay.
But I'm going to be very honest with you. The school system should strategically implement platforms and programs to attract more male teachers. We need more male teachers in these classrooms dealing with these young men. We have too many female teachers that's responsible of dealing with these teenage boys. And these teenage boys are so aggressive, full of testosterone, and whatever teenage boys do. They need more men dealing with them. It is a proven fact that when boys are separated from girls, and boys deal with strictly boys and male teachers, and girls deal with strictly girls and girl teachers, that the assaults, the crimes, and the fighting go drastically down. It is a fact that when kids wear uniforms to school, and don't tell me that we ain't got the money to buy these uniforms, because if we can finance Ukraine and we can finance Afghanistan and Iraq, hell yeah, we got the money to buy these uniforms. The government can pay for them if we just take some of that money back.
The government doesn't pay for anything, but I see your point.
Kids that go to school with the same uniforms, the assaults and fights are kept down at really a low.
I agree.
We got to get serious about this, bringing male teachers back into the schools and re-implementing school dress codes, man, to where these children are not fighting over who got the latest shoes, who got the latest outfit, and they're not assaulting other students to steal those outfits and steal those expensive shoes. Let's take that environment out of the school system and let's make some serious corrections. Those are some of the small steps, but the biggest steps got to be coming out of denial and admitting from our government that we have failed our students in America. And let's make some serious radical corrections, because right now it has become a radically sad situation where we are in the world statistically at academic performance of our kids.
I'm going to give some people some advice that's probably going to hurt a lot of feelings. But like when my kids were young, and I was a police officer and my wife was a social worker for the state, and I was going to school full time and working nights, we didn't really have a choice, right? So my wife would work and she would pay her car payment and she would pay the daycare and have very little money left over. And I would pay everything else, right, and go to school, and we didn't sleep. But when I got done with law school and I had this fancy job, we decided that she was going to stay home with the kids as a group. And then when I left that law firm to start my own practice, we were desperate. It was terrifying when you started your own business, but we said we're going to stick with this, you staying home and me earning the money, right? Because we think it's what's best for the kids. And then when we moved the kids into a private school, I couldn't really afford it at the time, right? It was a tremendous expense, but we thought this would be best for them. And I'll tell everyone, you got to, first of all, once you procreate, you should make the decision to put that kid first. We have so many fathers out here that don't know where the hell their kids are, what the hell their kids are doing, and your children are your legacy, and it's disgusting. Your whole focus, I mean, you should make time for yourself and do things for yourself, but your whole focus as a man, and I hate to gender it, but if you fathered children, your focus is to support and provide for them and give them a platform to be more successful. But hold on, let me finish real quick. But the thing is, if you want the best educational outcomes for your children, I say this as someone who's got a child who's a doctor at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the world right now, and I've got a child who is in one of the best law schools in the country right now. They both have degrees from great schools that I paid for. That if you want the best outcome for your kids, you either move way out of the city,
yes,
and you find the smallest school district with a small school, and you drive your butt all the way in an hour and a half, 2 hours into Houston to work every day, or you borrow the money, do whatever you have to do to get them into a small private school. And that's the way. You've got to abandon these giant campuses, even in the Woodlands or Katy or wherever, and get your kids in small schools and be involved.
I applaud you as a father that was willing to share that story about how you handled your children with your wife when y'all made no money.
That way it was terrifying.
And I want to say this to fathers. Man, brothers, don't be out there making babies if you can't afford to take care of them. In fact, before you have a baby with a woman, you all should talk about the economic status of both of you in that relationship, because children are expensive. You must have better family planning options.
But we know people don't do that.
But we have to, Charles, because we got people that are having children out of accident, and both mother and father are not economically independent or strong enough secure-wise to provide and take care of that child. And most families break up because of financial difficulties. If we would do a better job of being financially positioned to take care of a kid before we have one, we wouldn't have some of these problems that we're having, Charles. Look, man, we got to do a better job about that. Look, don't be having kids, brothers, if you broke already. What the hell you look like having a child, man, and you ain't got a job? What you look like telling a woman, okay, baby, let's have a baby, and you standing home playing video games all damn day and you ain't got a job? He's unworthy to be a father. A man with a job and understands the consequences of providing for children is a man that understands family planning is necessary. We can't have young men out here giving women children, and yet it becomes mama's babies and daddy's maybe when the financial conditions come upon the family. That has to change, Charles.
No, I don't disagree that we need to educate more, especially young people, on how to have safe sex and to not procreate.
Should a broke man have a child?
Well, yes.
Should a broke man have a child?
Yeah. You know what?
He ain't got $1, he should have a child.
What your child?
You know why he said that? Because you going to take care of it.
No. What?
You going to take care of it.
You going to let me finish? The thing is, like, I was just a young rookie policeman when my daughter was born.
Oh, you had a job, though.
Jobs, right. But I decided, and I loved being a police officer, but I decided, hey, I want my children to have a better life than I had, have more opportunities than I had to succeed. So I doubled down. I finished undergrad, which I'd been kind of half-assing. I went to law school. I got another law degree. I do all this. And honestly, at the end of the day, no matter how much my 27-year-old physician child frustrates me, right? She was the catalyst. Her birth said to me as a man,
it's time to grow up.
I've got to grow up.
That's right.
Even though I was in my early 20s, I got to get my crap together because I want to provide the best life I can for my children. And while they can frustrate me, sometimes they're both very high achieving. And what I don't get is these men that just have that baby and leave. And it's growing in America. When you look at the breakdown
among
of single,
all races,
right,
among all races.
And you're among all races, and you're also seeing a great number of mothers abandon their children. And it's insane
like never
to me.
before.
If you have made the decision to have a child, right? And now, you know, with the fall of Roe v. Wade, a lot of people, they're just forced with it. But if you've made the decision to have a child, you've also got to make the decision to change your life. Now, and
but most people don't make that decision, Charles.
But that's what they should do.
They get pregnant by accident.
Right, and then you've got to step up.
Like one of the rappers, Lil Boosie, said, how many I forgot to pull out babies exist around here? And now when you're trying to become a father, you realize it was an accident, and you want to pretend like it's only hers. Look, Charles, you have not noticed that the further we've gotten away from God principles in this country,
well, the further we've gone away from family,
and spiritually, but God was at the center of family principles and family structure.
Well, which God?
The one God who created all of us. There's only but one.
So
there's not several. There's only but one.
So the Muslim faith?
That's right. The God of Islam is saying the God is Christianity. The God of Christianity is same as Judaism. All of it's produced by one God.
So
we got different labels, but there's only but one God.
Just religious faith, you say,
when we've
is a
gotten away from
vehicle.
godly religious principles, let's be honest, morally we're on such a decline like never before. Look, we didn't have all of these single parent households when the church was strong in the community. When it was at its strongest, all these single parent households didn't exist like that. When the church was strongest in America, we didn't have the abandonment of children like we have today. When the church was strong in America, academically our children did better in school. When the church was strong in America, whether you like the church or not, we didn't have these school assaults and mass killings and mass murders in these schools when the church was strong in America. I'm a Muslim, and I can admit that when the church was at its strongest, America spiritually and morally was much better, academically also.
I know we like to put the rose-colored glasses on for history, but in the time period that you're talking about, it was also this time period where someone born with black skin was not allowed to win. Where women, if you happen to be born with a vagina, you weren't allowed to be a lawyer or a doctor or do all these things, right?
America's never been perfect.
Okay, well, what I'm saying,
you said many imperfections, yes.
So while we have many things we're doing wrong now, there were also many things that we did wrong in yesteryear, and we don't need to sugarcoat what was going on in yesteryear to make tomorrow better.
Agreed.
What we need to do is identify the problems of the day, right? Which is schools aren't safe. And schools are doing a crap job, and schools are too big. And we need to start building smaller schools that are more responsive. And for the kids that don't want to follow the rules, send them to a different damn school.
Doing segregation academically in America, the first schools in the black community were started by the church. The church would open their doors during the week for teachers, black teachers who volunteered to teach the children during segregation.
I agree.
And academically, you had more young black men graduating functionally literate than what you have right now in America. So the church,
well, right now it's just warehousing.
So the church in this community in
warehousing
America
the school
was at
to
the
prison
backbone
pipeline
of the producing of academic excellence
We
among
need
us
better
as a
schools.
people. But we have to go back to the way we were, abandon that which was not good, repudiate that which was evil and wicked, but take the good from yesterday and keep it for today. And the good that we've evolved to know what is in the best interest of America today, make both of them come together and work together. But this abandoning all the good of our past is wrong. Because what we're producing now, man, is something that we've never seen before. We used to sing the song, America the Beautiful. Do we look so beautiful now?
I am glad that we agree that there are good and bad from yesteryear, because oftentimes it seems like you think it's all should be condemned.
No, you claim that's all I talk about is bad history.
Well, no, I'm just saying you do spend a lot of time doing it. I'm glad you acknowledged that there was some good in the bag.
There was some
and
good,
frankly,
yes.
But I want to see solutions. And right now, the solutions for kids, smaller schools, involve parenting. That's how your kid
I
turns
agree.
out in best.
And don't tell me we ain't got the money. With all this money we wasting spending around here, we can make better schools and we can pay teachers a real living salary.